That video, for those who may have questions about it, shows images and footage from the water protectors at Standing Rock, the indigenous communities who are leading the fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline. And once again, I share my gratitude of being able to be here with you this morning on a weekend that some of us celebrate as Thanksgiving and others celebrate as a time of mourning. I come to you on stolen land, land taken from the Ohlone Nations, who are working to recreate a world where we are in right relationship with the earth and each other. I picked that video as our reading, as our musical interlude, not only because it's my favorite song and I had the creative authority to do so, but because of the promise to protect that it reminds me of. The promise to protect was something that many of us have taken on following the actions at Standing Rock to fight the Dakota Access Pipeline and to be in right relationships, not only with the Lakota Nation in the Dakotas, but with indigenous communities all around this nation. To be in right relationship, not only with the people, but also with the ways in which they are leading climate activism, racial justice activism. And in the before times, as some of us call our times prior to shelter in place, there were trainings happening around this promise to protect. And one of them happened in Oakland about a year and a half ago, and I was able to attend. And there they trained us on some of the basic principles of organizing and being in right relationship with indigenous communities in our region and elsewhere. They trained us on the history of grassroots movements and what it's like to be a good relative, what it's like to be in relationship with our ancestors, what it's like to even build strategies and all of the intricate aspects that go into planning intentional and strategic actions, including nonviolent direct action. And they had a bunch of activities as a part of that. And one of those activities was my favorite, a soccer game. We went out to the blacktop outside of this Greenpeace warehouse in Oakland, and they said, we're going to play a soccer game. And so they asked for 5 people to raise their hands to be on a team. I raised my hand. I didn't get picked. I was a little disappointed. And then they asked for 10 people to be on the other team. And I raised my hand, and the odds were in my favor, and I got picked for the team of 10. And I was like, oh, I get to be on the team of 10? I get to play the role of the oppressor in this direct action game? This is exciting. And then, of course, the team of 5 had some objections, like, how is this fair? 5 on 10, basic math, this doesn't make sense. And so the folks who are running the game, the training, the rule keepers, they said, well, wait, the team of 5 gets to set 3 rules for the team of 10 that they have to follow. Y'all, those rules, the first of them was that everybody on the team of 10, you had to link up with another player, link arms, and you had to do that throughout the whole game. You could only kick with your non-dominant foot. And if you were going to try to score a goal, you had to kick backwards. So immediately, the team of 10 had some objections. And at that point, I was like, oh, we're the majority that's oppressed. Bring it. And so we started playing this game, this wild soccer game. And at first, the team of 10, we tried. We started to observe the rules. And then we quickly decided, no. These are absurd rules. We decided not to follow them. And chaos ensued. As a team of 10, we decided to engage in what we felt was nonviolent direct action for the game. We stopped unlinking arms. We decided to pick up the ball with our hands and run it to the other team's goal. We decided to invite other people to join us from the sidelines. We tried everything we could to win this game and not follow the rules that had been set by us, by the other team. All the while, those who are nonviolent direct soccer, thank you for that comment in the chat. Meanwhile, the rule keepers, the folks that were running this training, kept trying to enforce those rules, trying to eject the members of the team of 10 that weren't following, kept trying to allow the team of 5 to create new rules, despite the fact that the team of 10 wasn't following them. So it was chaos, y'all. It was just chaos on that blacktop. And so at the end of it, we had a debrief. And those of us that were playing the game, those of us that were running the training, those of us that were watching the game, all gathered in a circle to talk about our experiences. And me, on that competitive adrenaline high, was like, oh, I totally figured it out. You know what? We were the oppressed, you know, the team of 10. We were trying to dismantle these rules and not obey the rules that this small minority of people in power had. And so we were doing everything we can not to obey them. And the team of 5 was like, well, but you had more people. You already had something set up with an advantage for you. And so there was this back and forth in the debrief about, well, who had more of an advantage, who had more privilege. And then suddenly, one of the people who had just been observing the game raised their hand and said, why did the two teams follow any of the rules at all? Why didn't they just work together? Y'all, in that moment, I deflated faster than a football in Tom Brady's hands. I realized that in that moment, I didn't think big enough, that I was limited even in my sense of self-righteous entitlement and all that I had learned about creating justice and engaging in action, that I had been so focused on what I had been fighting against, that those rules, that team, that I was limited in my imagination of strategies, my imagination of allies, my imagination of possibilities. I had been so focused on what I was fighting against that I forgot what I was fighting for. I had been so focused on fighting to win against my fellow players in that game that I hadn't even considered that we could all be part of something much larger, something united, working together to create a completely different way of being, a way that liberated all of us from a set of rules that had all of us at a disadvantage, but in different ways. And as somebody that prides themselves on being a Universalist Unitarian, I realized, sadly, that I had forgotten my universalism in that moment. I had forgotten the universalism that teaches me to combine all of our efforts and visions, to see how they intersect and connect, to think beyond just what is in front of me and imagine something so far beyond what is to what could be. What if I had been grounded in hope and creativity, not in this competitive adversity and scrapping to survive? We could have been imagining playing something as simple as 5-on-5 soccer, rule keepers be damned. We could have imagined something completely different. Double Dutch, hopscotch. Why didn't the two teams work together? They told us this after the activity, but the name of this soccer game was called Soccer for Suckers. In that game, both sides were so focused on what we were fighting against, that we were so centered on our despair, our sense of scarcity, this futility of fighting against a game that was stacked against all of us. And I don't know about you, but it feels like a little too real of a reflection of our world today. Some of those examples of what we are encountering, those soccer games for suckers right now, the desecration of sacred lands and commodification of the earth, the dehumanization and criminalization of migration, the capitalist economic structure that rewards the wealthy and punishes the poor. Perhaps most at the forefront of many of our minds, the erosion of an already fragile and incomplete democratic process by fascist ideologies at the highest level of government. And that's just a short list of what I could name. There is plenty for us to fight against, and a lot of it is connected. And there's so much that can cause fear, anguish, grief, anger, despair. We even know that sometimes some of these things can get worse. And those fears, those feelings, they are very real and they are very valid. And they can sometimes feel like the only things we have. And I'll be honest, there are days when they do mobilize me, and maybe the rest of us mobilize us. But to what end? We all know what we are fighting against. But what is it that we are fighting for? What is the world we want to create? In my work with the UU Justice Ministry of California, that is a question we come back to in all of our trainings, our worships, our gatherings, our actions. A question that we pose: what do you see when you imagine a world with love at the center? A world that's not defined solely by what isn't there, but focusing on what is there. What are those concretely defined positives that reflect our deepest yearnings, our holiest dreams? And you can get down into the details with that imagination. I remember one response from our trainings, imagining seeing my children running through fields barefoot. And they can be the broadest and boldest ideas of systemic change. Free higher level education for everybody. Truly liberated idea of gender, where the legal and societal norm is to wait until children or adults decide who they are and tell us who they are before we put it on any documentation. And then let that be as malleable as flower. When was the last time you really imagined that world? Really imagined it? When was the last time you immersed your heart, your mind, your spirit, your body in that world? And then what would it be like to do that every day? Maybe every time you look at a bag of flour. One place where more and more people are doing that work, doing that imagination, is in the incredible playground of science fiction. In science fiction, there is a world of imagination, of possibility, dreams beyond prescribed limits, stories rooted in our deepest values. One meme shared by an organizer that many of us may know shares a meme from Just Shower Thoughts. And the words of that meme say, When people talk about traveling to the past, they worry about radically changing the present by doing something small. But barely anyone in the present really thinks that they can radically change the future by doing something small. That meme had been shared by Adrienne Marie Brown, a name that has circled many organizing spaces, and some of you may be familiar with. And her text, Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds, is one that has been a part of those communities since its publication in 2017. And Adrienne Marie Brown herself identifies as a Black, biracial, queer, fat survivor, witch, movement facilitator, mediator, doula, artist, writer, podcaster, Octavia Butler scholar. In her book, she talks about science, organizing, and science fiction, inviting us to lean into the complexities of change and to learn from them, to create with them in our effort to transform our world. And weaving together these elements of science, of organizing, of science fiction, she generates this fluid essence of what she calls emergent strategy and describes social justice and transformation work as science fictional behavior, because it is, quote, being concerned with the way our actions and our beliefs now, today, will shape the future, tomorrow, and the next generation. And the science fictional work, our justice and transformation work, necessitates us rooting ourselves in a vision of what the world could be, what in our most universalist understanding the world should be for all of us to live whole and liberated lives in right relationship with each other and this precious planet that supports our being. To do that, Adrienne Marie Brown reminds us that we need to expand our imagination. She reminds us that we are in the middle of an imagination battle, that we are, quote, living now inside the imagination of people who thought economic disparity and environmental destruction were acceptable costs for their power. It is our right and our responsibility to write ourselves into the future. All organizing is science fiction. If you are reshaping the future, you are a futurist. Much like myself in that game of soccer for suckers, we limit our imagination when we stay focused on what we are fighting against. We spend so much of our time letting ourselves be confined to visions that have their roots in violence, competition, dehumanization, and entitlement. We don't spend enough time expanding our imagination. So what is the world we want to create? What is the world that seems so far away and yet so possible? What is the world we see that is centered on that which we value? And I'm not offering us that opportunity to reflect and to engage, to abandon our reality, but to root ourselves in what is possible so that we can more firmly, more safely, more collectively, more resiliently, more faithfully face our reality. Yes, the faithful work of Unitarian Universalists does include responding to the injustices of our current reality. But to truly move us forward, we must be centered on how we are changing our reality towards what we know is better, a world with love at its center. Yes, our faithful work as Unitarian Universalists does include dismantling oppressive systems, but it must be centered on the imagination and creation of liberatory communities and practices that truly value the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Liberatory communities and practices that truly embody justice, equity, and compassion in all of our relations. A world that has liberatory communities and practices that respect and revere the interdependent web of life and existence of which we are a tiny but influential part. In these times where our world has centered oppression, has centered violent ideologies, has limited all of our imaginations with the bars of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, classism, and more, we can't allow our imagination to be limited anymore. Too many lives have been lost, and too much of this planet has been permanently destroyed. Today, we can make a choice rooted in our faith. Today, we can say that narrative doesn't get to guide us or define our work anymore. Those values, they will not shape my imagination of my future, my children's future, or our world's future. Because I believe there is another way. Communities that have long been denied their power, their humanity, their wisdom, their voice, have been sharing that wisdom for generations. Communities that were featured in that video by Nako and Medicine for the People. And my faith, our faith, tells us there is another way. A way that is just, that is good, that is holy, that is sacred, beautiful, joyful. Today and every day, it is time for us to listen, to imagine, to collaborate, and to center that love that we are all worthy of and responsible for creating. Here in California, some of the ways that we have been doing that, just right here in Oakland, the Anti-Police Terror Project has started mental health first responders as an alternative to calling the police for anybody in a mental health crisis, to provide support and resources rather than an oppressive system that we know has criminalized. Here also in the Bay Area, the Ohlone Nations have created the Sogorea Te Land Trust, where those of us who are living on this stolen land can give to the indigenous communities of this nation so that they can begin to reclaim their space and their legal place on this land to help us be in better relationship with them and with this earth. These aren't national changes, they are local ones. But they are fragments of what is possible if we continue to do this work together in our own spaces. So in this imagination battle, in this call to create love and to cultivate liberation, where would you start? Where have you already started? Taking that bag of flour, that endless possibility, where have you, where have your neighbors, where has your state action network begun to imagine a world with love at the center? Where have you started not only to dismantle the old, but where have you started building something new? Where have you started creating the unimaginable?
Hi, I'm Reverend Hannah Capaldi.
And I'm Reverend Abby Tennis. We are the ministers at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where our mission is to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world.
We're so grateful that you watched, and we hope that the sermon connected with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for a live worship service every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always find the link to that service on our website at www.philauu.org. In these services, you'll hear words like you've just heard, and you also get a chance to greet one another, pray together, sing together, and we even hold a virtual coffee hour after services to get a chance to greet some new and old friends.
If you want to support the mission of this community and you feel moved to give, You can do so by going to the website that Reverend Abby just mentioned. You can find that link below, or you can text 215-709-5095 and follow the prompts to give.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, we encourage you to share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.